Shavuot Tov and welcome. It's lovely to see you just as we're heading into the week of Hanukkah, and we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to share a tour with my old friend Yaakov Arram. I'm going to spotlight him for everyone. There we are. He has gone out into the beach to be able to share some of his work in his work in shell finding and surf culture with us this evening. Yaakov was with me at school. We were involved in AJ6 together, and he was my first chavrusa. Just after Mandy and I got married, we learnt Ramban together on Tuesday evenings. He went on to become a rabbi, and I went on to become a rabbi. He stayed in the education system in Israel, and I traveled the world. But now, as well as being involved directly in chinuch, or as part of his work in chinuch, he's a tour guide in Israel, and it has been a particularly lean period for him over that. But he's diversified, and one of his areas of diversification has been bringing his experience to the Gola through video tours. And what you get out of one of Yaakov's tours, whether it's in person or online, is the opportunity to see places which are part of our heritage and culture. Some ones which you'll have seen already. Some of the ones are the ones that you don't get to see unless you are on a very niche tour, but presented both personally, also with a real view to archaeological integrity and to fidelity to Tanakh. The advantage of having a rabbi who is from give a tour is that you get the real McCoy in terms of the Yadut. And the other thing you have the benefit of is a St. Paul's and Cambridge education, which you just can't you can't do better unless you've got a St. Paul's and Oxford education. So it's a wonderful pleasure. I'm just letting people in on Zoom again, from the waiting room. It is a wonderful pleasure to be able to have a tour of a couple of Maccabee sites in Israel. And please do take the experience and wisdom into your Hanukkah celebrations, which begin this week. Over to you, Yaakov.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Rabbi Lawrence, and Shavuot Tov to everybody. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. And at any point, if anyone has something they want to ask, I'll be happy to I want this to be as much as possible a dialogue or some sort of relationship between not just me talking and sharing things. You can either, best thing is to unmute yourself and speak up, because I'm going to be fiddling around with different parts of technical things. By way of introduction, what we know about the Maccabees from Chazal is very little. In the Talmud and the Gemara, it just mentions the story of Hanukkah, the lighting candles. Most of the sources we know historically, one of the main sources is actually a book that didn't make it into Tanakh, mentioned Tanakh, but it makes it into some of the Christian Bibles, but not into the Jewish Bibles, and that's the books of the Maccabees. The book of the Maccabees tells us a lot of the actual blow-by-blow accounts of the fighting and the history of it. Doesn't mention the miracle of the oil. Does mention that we conquered Jerusalem back and purified the temple, but doesn't mention the miracle of the oil. That's another question, maybe that we'll see if we've got time, we can touch on it a little bit. What I'd like to do this evening is try and see what we can see out there. What evidence is there for the Maccabees that we can touch, experience, see, and be inspired by? Notwithstanding the fact that we'll see what we can do. Let's see what do the Maccabees, what we could find out in the field, and we'll see where we go from there. I've got a number of places I want to take us to. This basically, just to give you a heads up of what we're doing. The first is a place called the Maccabean Graves. We'll see if that's really what it sounds like it should be. Another thing is an ancient village from the area of the hometown of the Maccabees, in that area, the Modi'in area, going back to the days of the Maccabees. And the third is one of the battle sites, the battlefields, where Judah the Maccabee had one of his great victories. I don't know how much I'm assuming one is the basic story of Hanukkah, just to be clear, is that we have a period of time in the land of Israel after the Alexander the Great had conquered the Middle East back in the 4th century BCE. The land of Israel and the Jews living in the land of Israel are under the control of different empires, either the Ptolemaic Empire or the Seleucids. Ptolemy and Seleucids being the two of Alexander the Great's generals, who then inherited the possessions. The Ptolemies based in Egypt, the Seleucid dynasty based in what is Syria, and the land of Israel was battleground backwards and forwards over the centuries between them. And the most infamous emperor that basically started the revolt was the emperor Antiochus Epiphanes, who went on a campaign of radical Hellenization, trying to force the Jews to basically abandon Judaism, as the story is probably well known, forbidding activity. Went on a whole set of decrees, actually, forbidding circumcision and Shabbat observance and so forth, and that triggered a radical response by about a bunch of hotheads, a family from the Modi'in area, Matityahu and his sons, the Hashmonaim, as we call them, the Hasmonean family, who basically led a revolt against, basically on religious grounds, against the sacrifices of pigs. That was the ultimate trigger, and then said that, but it's more than that. We want freedom from these Greek overlords, and in the series of years of battles, basically won independence, which was against the odds, actually, and essentially set up an independent Jewish state. The years being 167, beginning of the revolt, maybe it's 168, as some people say, until about by the time you get to the year 160, we basically got our independence. That's just an overview. Any comments so far? Questions, clarifications? Good. So let's start. I'm going to try and start my first screen sharing, God willing. Let's try this. Hang on, let me make sure I share computer sound. Right. Okay. And I would like just to know if you can see something. Can you see a screen, Rabbi Lawrence? Yes? Yeah. And this is Maccabean graves. Okay. The first part of this is a little bit loud. I'm not going to warn you because I'm by the road. And it'll get a little bit quiet as we a little bit further on. Some of this clip is me talking on screen, and some of it will be me talking like I am now. So just bear with me. Okay, everyone should be ready, and let's go.
We're standing next to Highway 443, just outside the city of Modi'in. And there's something I want to show you on the sign next to the road. Maccabean graves. Sounds interesting. Let's check it out.
So just a little way off the main road, in the middle of a forest, essentially, we're walking in the forest, and we can see in front of us holes in the ground. Right in front is a big stone, and you can see there's a hole, a cavity, and the archaeologist said this is definitely a grave. Okay, this was found more than 100 years ago. It was known the graves are here. The question is, are these the Maccabean graves? Well, probably not. You've got graves. We know from the book of Maccabees that monumental graves are set up for the leaders, the main sons of Matityahu and some of the other family members. 7 big graves were set up. Just before I get to the next stage, we're next to a village, I should say, of an Arab town called Al-Madiyah, which seems to keep the name of Modi'in. So we know we're in the region of Modi'in. Historically, it makes sense. That's why the modern city is built where it is. And there's ancient graves were found here. But it was thought this must be it. But then subsequent research has shown that given the style of those graves, they're not from the times of the Maccabees, unfortunately. Okay, we're kind of pretty certain that they're not. There's a lot of the label because it sounds good. But unfortunately, I can't say this is really it. In fact, the research shows us these are Byzantine era graves. Somewhere around here, there may be the graves of the Maccabees. Further up in the forest, though, there's a clearing. And this is the little clip I want to show you.
And behind me, and in front of you, you can see, in the clearing, 7 pyramids. Not by chance. It's written in the book of Maccabees that on the graves of the Maccabees, Shimon erected 7 pyramids in their memory. The modern state of Israel commemorates its Maccabees, the fallen soldiers who fought in this area, mostly in the War of Independence, by a similar monument of 7 pyramids. This clearing behind me is where the community gathers every Yom HaZikaron, every Memorial Day, and remembers all the fallen of all the battles. but particularly those who fell in this area. Very appropriate way to remember their memory, the ancient Jewish way, going back thousands of years, of Jewish fighters from this very same region.
Okay, so we haven't found something specific we can relate to the Maccabees. Also, it seems we haven't found any ancient evidence there. As I said, it looked like we're going to find the graves, but maybe we're finding something which I want to develop, which is something which is the legacy of the Maccabees, which is the fighting spirit. Okay, I'll just move on to the next screen. Hang on 1 second. I need to close that. Well, excuse me. Okay, let's close that one. 1 second. Okay, so that's one. Again, in that area, there's those graves. In another part of Modi'in, however, next to the modern Modi'in, there is another thing I want to share. 1 second. I'm going to open this up. Give me a second. You should be seeing me again. Everyone see my face?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. You may notice, by the way, I took this on slightly different days. The weather's gotten more wintry here. But on the other side of Modi'in, that first area, the Maccabee graves on the north side of the town of Modi'in. This is on the southern side of the city. Let's see what we can find here. 1 second. I should be able to play. 1 second.
Shalom. We're on the edge of the modern town of Modi'in. Modi'in, named after the hometown of the Maccabees. And we're here to explore and to try to discover what might be found that's still around from those days.
So, as I said, this is the modern town, and right at the edge of one of the neighborhoods, it's actually on the southern end, as I said, when you come into the city of Modi'in, if you're coming off Highway 1, which you can see just in the distance over there, there's a path leading us to an ancient Jewish village that has been dated going right back to the time of the Hashmonaim, of the Second Temple, and right back to those days. You can see now in front of you, it has been on one of my previous trips who made me recognize what this is. This is a mosaic, these little stones here, a mosaic floor, and this was used for treading the grapes. It's basically what's called a Yaakov, a wine press. And that's one. There you go. Gut is the place where they tread on the grapes, and the hole where the wine is collected is called a Yaakov. So this is an ancient Jewish.
Now we're walking along the ancient lane. Notice the stones to our right, and in a moment we're just going to be going through a small gap in the stones just to get across to our next location. And this is one of the treasures that was discovered here just outside Modi'in, an ancient synagogue going right back to the times of the Maccabean, of the Maccabees. There has been an era. This synagogue was in use actually for hundreds of years, right through to the Bar Kokhba revolt. There's been a little bit of restoration work on the stones there, but most of the stones are the original. And you can see the spaces in the middle, which would have held up the pillars and held up the ceiling.
Okay, 1 second. There you go. So there's a diagram here of what the ceiling. Oh, hang on a second. I'm going to try to pause it. Okay, so that's how it would have looked. Synagogue looked in its heyday with the pillars holding up. Just say a word or two just about synagogues. What's particularly significant about this one, again, if it's going back to the times of the Maccabean, the times of the Hashmonaim, and from then on, it means it's a Beit Knesset that was in function and use during the times of the temple. There's temple sacrifices going on in Yerushalayim, and there are also synagogues in the towns, in the villages. And part of the question is, what were they used for? We kind of take it for granted that the Beit Knesset is a place we come to, 3 tefillot a day and so forth. The evidence, the archaeological evidence would suggest that although I would say that they were also used for prayer, the first thing to notice is the seating plan. The seating is always seating around the edges. People are facing each other. Second thing to note is the name. Beit Knesset means the house of gathering. The third thing is there are inscriptions. Actually, one of the inscriptions comes from the city of Jerusalem, from the area of what we call Ir David, where the description of the functions of the synagogue mentioned almost everything except for tefillah. It's a place for gathering, it's a place for learning the Torah, it's a place for people to come if they're coming from out of town and they need a place to stay, and they don't mention prayer at all, which is an interesting question of what exactly the function of the Beit Knesset was during the times of the Beit HaMikdash, during the times of the temple. We do know that there were gatherings on a regular basis when it was divided up into different regions. There was something called the Ma'amadot, that when the korbanot were being brought, that there should be representatives of both Kohanim who are doing the work, the Leviim, the Levis who are also helping with sing and doing other things in the temple, and the Israelites. And in the localities, there should be people gathering on a regular basis for special ceremonies and services and so forth. That seems to be the origin of the use of course, after the Churban, after the destruction of the temple, it takes on an even more central role as we know it today, when we don't have the opportunity to go to the Beit HaMikdash, so a high priority to give into communal prayer. Chazal do say that the three prayers that we have, Shachrit, Mincha, and Aravit, Mariv, are corresponding to different things that went on in the Beit HaMikdash. And the idea being that during the time of the temple, we may not need it so much. Be that as it may, what's important is that this is a building that's been dated going right back to the times of Beit Sheni, and significantly including the times of
synagogue is a Greek.
Remember that I love what I said. I've added in here. I forgot actually I put this quick, so just hear myself on
word. The Hebrew word is Beit Knesset, and Beit Knesset literally means the house of gathering. And one of the key clues to know that this indeed was the Beit Knesset is the seating arrangements. The fact that there is these stones around the edge, as you can see.
So that shows, as I said, that the seating plan is the giveaway that it's a communal building, and that's the word Beit Knesset together. What's also significant is right next to the Beit Knesset, there's something else. We go right just outside, and there's some steps leading down, something that was dug underneath the Beit Knesset, or at the edge of it. And we went down the steps and looking inside, and there was convenience and water there, and there's clearly steps. This is a mikveh. There's a mikveh right next to the Beit Knesset. And we know in the Second Temple period, in times of the Maccabean, and one of the things they're fighting for is to ensure that we can continue with personal purity. Here's the view from the outside. Right there, you can see here, that's the mikveh, the steps going under here, and over in front of us, that's the wall of the Beit Knesset. I said the mikveh, the actual part of the mikveh, goes a little bit underneath where the Beit Knesset would be. I'll tie this into the thing we first saw, which is that the wine press was very important throughout this whole period, from the Maccabees and on, Second Temple and on, even after the Churban. People were very concerned to make sure that the wine was produced in purity. It's Mishnah that deals with this, that to make sure that the people who are treading on the grapes are pure. So you're going to have accessible nearby. You need a mikveh for people to immerse themselves in before working on the grapes. And certainly, just in general, people were very careful for a whole bunch of reasons, including the fact that if you had, let's say, Kohanim who were living in the vicinity and they wanted to eat the gifts you give them, the truma or challah that you give them, they have to be pure. And over and above that, there was a general spirit at the time of people wanting to even eat their regular food in a state of purity. So having a mikveh handy in the community is something we find all over the land of Israel from this Second Temple period and on. But what's, as I said, special about this Beit Knesset is we know it goes way back to the times of during the temple, and more specifically, it's been dated that it was in existence and being used at the time of the Maccabean revolt. So this is a sort of whether specifically we know that the Hashmonai family were here is an open question. I'll throw it out the possibility. I don't think this is anything we can prove. We don't really know where Modi'in is. Okay, there's that Arab village. The assumption is it's near there. It could be here. Okay, if you want to stretch the thing and say maybe this was their village. I'm not entirely sure that's the case, but certainly it's true. This is one of the villages in their vicinity of Jews who presumably were part of the revolt and were living in this place. And the things that we're fighting for are things like holding on to the mikveh. So that's gives us a chance to touch a bit of the time period. And what's interesting now, if you just look, I think I put at the end, we're right next to the main road, actually. I don't think I put a bit of the clip in, but 1 second. Pause that. But that site is called el Amudim, which is an Arabic word meaning the mother of the pillars, because they recognized the pillars in ancient times and they dug up there. But what's interesting is right near the ancient town of Modi'in, we have something that definitely goes back to the times of the Maccabean over there. Let me just 1 second. So what I wanted to do was close that. Okay, now what I want to do is, no, 1 second, getting ahead of myself. Okay, I want to go, 1 second. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to share, and as I said, if anybody has anything to add, I'm going to do the following. 1 second. I want to show you something I found online. Somebody else did it, but it's kind of, I've got a couple of critiques of it, but it's still quite useful. And that is the following. Let me just show you this, share this one. There we go. And that's the following. Let's get it big. And what we have here, hopefully you can see it. If you can see it, there's a map of the map of the whole country from above, like a satellite map from Google Map. And what you can see here are, someone's highlighted the different battle sites and it was mostly Judah, Yehuda. One of the sons of Mattatyahu dies early. And Yehuda, the next, I don't know if he's the oldest, but he's certainly the leading son, takes the revolt in his hands, and he is the hero. And it's not by chance. Yehuda Maccabee takes a chance because I said there's a huge empire ruling here. The Seleucid Empire, Antiochus is in charge, and he sends his general to put down the revolt. The first thing that he does, he has guerrilla-style battles. He manages to besiege one of the Greek armies, the Syrian Greek armies over here in the middle of the Shomron, a place called Ma'ale Levona. That's over here. Hopefully you can see the cursor key. That's the first battle, way back at the beginning of the revolt. The next battle, where he succeeds again, it's like guerrilla fighting, taking them by surprise, is in Beit Horon, which was on the main road towards Jerusalem at that time. And then comes perhaps the key battle, and the pattern I want to share, the battle of what's called Emmaus, which is basically here along highway number 1 of the modern highway number 1 of our main road to Jerusalem today. On this map, you also can see some of the other battles that took place after we went to Jerusalem. He wrote here, this is one thing I don't think, he suggested, whoever made this website, I don't think he's got did his homework properly, because he puts the rededication of the temple at the end. But the truth is, after those 3 battles is when we went up to Jerusalem. Slight debate amongst the historians exactly what the date is, but the date I've seen is it's 165, Kislev 165. After the Battle of Emmaus is when we managed to get to Jerusalem and managed to rededicate the temple. That's going to be the time when the miracle of Hanukkah will take place. The story of Hanukkah is the years before and after. And subsequent to that, of course, the Greeks keep coming back, and there are another series of battles in the vicinity, many of them in Yehuda, near Efrat. There's a big battle called Beit Zachariah, and there's one of the tragic battles is when Judah dies in the battle of Adasah, but then his brothers take over, Yochanan, subsequently after that Shimon, but just a nice kind of neat little map here. I want to just now share one more thing, just to get a better sense of that. 1 second, and that is this. 1 second. Hang on, I just need to, I'm not me'achuz on my, stop that one. Okay, and here we go. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully now you should have, you should see, let me just, you should have on the screen now a diagram. Just Rabbi Lodge, just give me a heads up that that's, from my point of view, I'm sending it out. You got it? Excellent. So this is the Battle of Emmaus in the year 167 BCE, one of the key battles. Okay, you on this? This is a nice little diagram. You can see here Modi'in. We were over in Modi'in, where, as I said, they were buried somewhere near there, but we didn't. The graves I showed you are what's called the graves of the Maccabees, not really the graves of the Maccabees, but there you go. Goff now, which is the area near Ma'ale Levona, the first guerrilla action against some troops. Second battle took place on this road here, but the main big battle of Emmaus is when it's finally they send in thousands of troops come in. The main, we call them sometimes Syrians, sometimes Greeks. It's the same thing. Okay, Syrian. It says on the map here, Syrian army means it's the Greeks from the Seleucid Empire, which is based in Syria. They come up the coast. Onto the left of the map is basically the coastal road. They come with a huge army, tens of thousands of troops, and they come and they camp in a place called Emmaus. Emmaus is actually a Greek word meaning chamam in Hebrew, which would be the place where there'd been like hot springs or baths or something. It was the town on the lowlands on the way up towards Jerusalem. And Yehuda, who's based in the hills now, sets up his camp in a place called Mitzpah over here on the right. You can see it on the blue. And basically, he takes the initiative. He says, I know they're down here on the plain and they're going to come marching up against us, and there are many more thousands of them than us. So what he does is brilliant initiative, basically, taking a lot of chances, a lot of, and we talk about the miracles. Well, one of the miracles is Jews having the guts to go and fight against the odds. Yehuda goes and he says, I'm not going to wait for them. I'm going to take the initiative. And what he does is in the middle of the night, he comes down from the hills. At the same time, Gorgias, one of the main generals of the Syrian Greek army, is going up to his camp looking for him. So they're crossing each other in the middle of the night. So Gorgias is the red thing going up the hills to Mitzpah. Yehuda's coming down, takes the camp by surprise in the early hours of the morning. The remaining of the troops that are there under a general called Nicanor, are basically taken completely by surprise. Many casualties on their side. Their camp is basically wasted, and they've run away in panic. Gorgias has gone up the hill looking for Yehuda, comes to Mitzpah, doesn't find him there, and realizes, oh my goodness, he must have gone behind me in the middle of the night or whatever. So he turns around, comes back to his camp to find that Yehuda has had a tremendous victory. The rest of the army has basically been killed or scattered, and he basically defeats Gorgias coming back down. Fantastic victory, using amazing, number one, it's a victory on so many levels. First, it's in and of itself as a victory, one of the main victories that opened the road to allow us to come to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, and rededicate the temple. But more importantly, or equally, not more importantly, but equally important is the initiative that's taken, the actual tactical genius of basically not waiting and moving around and managing to take them by surprise in their home camp and then win the battle. And I also think no less important is the spirit behind that, the ability to take the initiative and to not give up and to do what needs to be done. What has to be said is that we tend to, when we celebrate Hanukkah, we think it's okay, they revolted, they won, moved on. It was years and years of fighting. It wasn't a simple event. Each one of these victories was amazing. Rededicating the temple was amazing. In Jerusalem for the whole period, right until Shimon, there's three brothers, is Yehuda, Yochanan, and Shimon, right up until he really takes control. There is a tower called the Chakra standing there, the Akron in Greek, in the middle of Jerusalem of Greek soldiers, and there are many, many battles. It's an ongoing struggle to win. It involves alliances from overseas. It's also that if we pan out to get the bigger geopolitical perspective, the fact is what worked to help us win in the times of the Maccabean was the fact that the Roman Empire was on the ascendance. Rome was growing, and they were interested in putting pressure on the Seleucid Greeks. And basically, we managed to get messengers out to the Romans, and they said, okay, we're going to back the Maccabean. It's very ironic. The Romans were our allies in the beginning. And through the Roman help, we were able to basically put pressure on the Seleucids that helped. And in addition, we were aided by the fact there was internal fighting after Antiochus died amongst his generals and his one of his descendants. And they were going backwards and forwards. And as we were maintaining a certain amount of political independence, we were able to play one off against the other and get privileges and rights and the recognition and acknowledgement. And slowly but surely, the Hasmonean dynasty put itself together and built the Jewish state, okay, by playing one side off against the other and using things. But there's no question, all these things together, the spirit of fighting, the willingness to go out and risk one's life, clever tactics, fighting and winning the battles, the international alliances, all these things come together to enable us to celebrate what we're celebrating with Hanukkah. Now, what's also, just as sort of a continuation of sort of the next chapter I wanted to share is location, because this location of the Battle of Emmaus is not the last time we fight in this region. Because 2,115 years later, because I'm going to do the maths, but I hope 2,115 a few years after the Battle of Emma, so 167 BCE. We get to the year. Quick, everyone's too sleepy after Shabbat. Okay, 1948. 1948, same area, key battles. Now, this is a map which I hope you can see clearly. Just to be nice to have, just to make sure everyone's. Someone just let me know you can see it. You can hopefully see my cursor key as well. This map is actually written in French, but it's good enough. You have here Imwas. Imwas was an Arab village named after a mouse. It's the same location, same place where the battle took place with Yehuda Maccabee. And we get to 1948 for this in this period of time, which is the War of Independence. We have a major crossroads just down the road, like a kilometer just down the road, or less actually, just 200 meters down the road. We have this road, the main road going from west, going to go from south to north is left to right on this map because the angle is slightly off, but this is sort of going, right, cursor keys now are heading you north, the main road north towards Ramallah. And at the same time, there's a road coming from the west towards east, towards Jerusalem, this road going up towards Jerusalem. And they meet at this crossroads next to a monastery called Latrun, which was next to an ancient or an older Crusader era fortress. That gave it its name, Latrun de Chevalier, the Tower of the Knights. And next to this crossroads, the British had, back in the 1930s, built a police station to control the road. Everyone knew this was going to be a very important crossroads. At that time, there was the Arab revolt, and they needed to have extra security, but to secure the road. Comes 1948, this is a key junction, because whoever controls this fort controls the road to Jerusalem. And that's not a small thing, because at that time, the Arabs are laying siege to Jerusalem. There are 100,000 Jews in Jerusalem under siege. And this is the only road that we can supply them with, because is the road from the west, the road from Tel Aviv, because the road from the north, the south, and east of Jerusalem is completely controlled by Arabs. So there's no way in for Jews to go in and out of Jerusalem that way. The only way in and out is on this road. And Ben Gurion knows that, and he understands that. And even in the months before independence, we've been fighting along this road, further up the road, some key battles to open the road. As soon as we declare independence, something really significant happens, which is that we're invaded. And we're invaded by the best army of the day, which is the Jordanian army, the Arab Legion. And they come and they take the fort, this fort. And basically that puts a stranglehold on the road to Jerusalem. That it basically is not a small thing. Ben Gurion understands, or at least believes, that if this road is blocked for a length of time, that means there's no food, and more importantly, no ammunition getting into Jerusalem. The same Arab Legion is in Jerusalem. They're marching into Jerusalem. It would take a small amount of time. They will succeed in forcing a surrender for all the Jews living there. That's not a small thing, because it cannot be that we would have a state, we would have the motivation to have a country if there's no Jews left in Jerusalem. If we've lost Yerushalayim, there would be no spirit to fight. The spirit is more important in some ways than the material. And Ben Gurion says this is the most important thing, is to open this road. And the only way to open the road, so it seemed, is to take out this fort, is to attack this fort, the fort of Latrun. And in a series of battles that takes place in the early stages of the War of Independence, 5 key battles, wave after wave, huge amounts of casualties. We send troops again and again, people to fight at Latrun, and it's a disaster. There are 5 defeats, 5 huge defeats. And after each battle, I want to go back a second. Before each battle, Ben Gurion says to the commanders leading it, you've got to take Latrun at all costs. That's his words to them, to Shlomo Shamir and the other commanders, and to Yigal Yadin. You've got to take it at all costs, which is an amazing thing to say. Every defeat that comes, as soon as he hears the news of the defeat, he says, okay, send again, send more troops. It's almost like Ben Gurion's it's like obsessive, completely obsessive. We've got to fight again and again. We have to have that road open. It's the number one priority. Every other front, it has to take secondary priority to opening the road to Jerusalem. So much so that one of the commanders, Dan Evin, who's commanding a sector in the middle of the country, where he's facing the Iraqi army, who are poised to split the country in two. It's in the area near Tel Aviv, between Tel Aviv and Haifa. They're going to come over across there from Tulkarm and Kalkila, and they're literally going to come to make it to the coast. We will have no communications between Tel Aviv and Haifa. The whole country will be split in two. And he says, you want to take troops away from me to help you fight in Latrun. That's what Ben-Gurion had requested. And if you do that, the whole country will be split in two. And Ben-Gurion's response is, so be it. We'll go by sea. We'll go take boats. We'll go from Tel Aviv to Haifa by sea. And when we've won the Battle of Latrun, we'll send the troops back. I mean, it's like just to illustrate how high a priority he felt it was to open the road here, just as it had been in the days of Yehuda HaMaccabee. This area is the place where we fight for Yerushalayim, if you like. The fight for Yerushalayim was at Emmaus in the days of Judah and the Maccabee, and the fight for Yerushalayim was in Latrun in 48 in the 6-Day War. As I said, there were defeats, huge amounts of defeats, and the irony was, even though we lost the battles, we won the campaign, and we won the campaign. And there's another map I'm just sharing right now. We won the campaign. Without going into too many, there's lots of squiggles on this match, but the main thing I want to focus on, if you can see where the cursor key, the main thing was that during the course of these battles, a bunch of guys managed to figure out a different route to Jerusalem, and they managed to go on a cross-country route in the area south of Latrun. This route, which became known as the Burma Road, it was a nickname taken from the British Burma Road, but that they'd used in the Far East. That's why they called it the Burma Road. And this road was a little track, sort of very difficult track, but successful enough that it was able to get from the area which we had already under our control, near Khulda, up to Beit Machsir, which was an Arab village, which today is a Jewish village called Beit Meir, just up the road to where I live, actually. We were able to get, and from there on to the hills to Jerusalem. And the fact that we were able to open this road meant we could keep the supply going to Jerusalem of the essential food and ammunition to keep the Jews of Yerushalayim alive, going, defending themselves. Even though we lost the old city, we were able to hold on in the rest of Yerushalayim. And then that was basically very important for the whole morale and basically for the whole significance of having a Jewish country. How could you have a Medina Yehudit without Jerusalem? That was basically the thinking. So that's just something I wanted to share, was that the same ideas come together here. I'm just going to stop that share and add something else. One second. Oops. One second. Just one more thing. Just pause a second, and then hang on, I just lost my place. I may have accidentally closed something that I shouldn't have closed. Just hang on a second, guys. One more thing I wanted to share. I just accidentally closed it. Let me just reopen it from here. One second. Sorry about that. I must have accidentally closed up something. Apologize for the technical side of things here. One second. There we go. This should be it. Okay. Open this up. Okay. So hopefully you see on the screen, Latrun. This is on the side. You want to see it?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay. Fine. So this is the. Turn that out of it. This is the fortress. This is the British police station that was taken over by the Jordanian Legion in 1948. You can go visit it today because after the 6-Day War, of course, we took it back. And you come up close to the edge, you can still see bullet holes. There's a huge gaping hole over there. Huge amounts of bullet holes are the series of our attacks that we kept coming back to try and take this police station. They were better armed than we were, actually. And this is the view from the top. And here from the top, you can see that's the road, modern road, but more or less the contours of the north-south road. And now looking just slightly towards the west, and behind where the cursor would be, because the old road was there, where the cursor is now, towards the west now looking. And moving the camera now towards the north, and you can see in the distance, that is the city of Modi'in, the modern city of Modi'in, and approximately where the old city of Modi'in was. Here is modern highway number 1, which was built only after, in the 1970s, after the Six-Day War. That wasn't the old original road. The original road was the other side of this fortress. Here's the Israeli flag. Just behind the Israeli flag, and just pausing it, there's a bunch of hills over this area. And those hills over here is Emmaus. This is the scene of that battle. It's the Battle of Latrun. It's the battle before of Yehuda Maccabi. It's the same place, essentially, and the same battle in the sense that it's the same purpose. Open the road to Jerusalem in order that we can have an independent Jewish state. That's the same principle of the battle that takes place here. You can see over here the Trappist monastery of Latrun over there, and no less significant than the actual battles here and the opening the road through the Burma Road, which was in the hills. Now you're looking this way. Over here, the Burma Road was behind the monastery in that direction. No less significant than anything else was one of the commanders here was none other than Ariel Sharon, when he was called Shineman in one of his first campaigns. And he said, a little bit before he died, actually, this ceremony, he said repeatedly, this was the hardest experience I ever had. And he fought in many wars. The hardest experience he ever had was the battles of Latrun. Was in the first battle, where it was a disaster. They were being shot at all sides, and they were wounded in the field of battle. And the field of battle being the fields you're seeing right in front of you now, that was the main field of battle. It looks very pastoral, but this is where so many of our soldiers were dying and were killed. And in that battle, he learned an important lesson, which was he was wounded, and one of his soldiers picked him up and dragged him out of the scene of the battle and to survive. And he learned the lesson, the IDF learned the lesson, that we don't leave the wounded behind on the field of battle. And that's a very important principle in the ethos of the Israeli army till today. It has to be said that what was happening in the battles of Latrun, as in all the battles of the War of Independence, whenever they were wounded, if you were a wounded person was left behind, they were basically murdered by the Arabs. They didn't take prisoners. They killed them. And very few exceptions where they took prisoners. Not the local Palestinian Arabs killed every Jew they could get their hands on. And if you left behind the wounded guy, you're basically condemning him to death. Sharon was saved by one of his own soldiers, and that's one of the lessons they learned in this battlefield. So it's kind of ironic because it was a defeat. It was 5 huge defeats of the War of Independence, but in the bigger picture, the principles for which the battle was fought were the principles of opening the road to Jerusalem. And as I said, in the campaign as a whole, we were able to succeed, whereas Yehuda Maccabean here had actually had a clear victory, but the principle is still the same. Okay, that's the things I wanted to share. That's a little bit of my things. And I'm going to open it up now to anybody's observations, questions, thoughts. Open to the floor.
Feel free to unmute yourselves to ask questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yaakov.
Hello? I can hear you, yeah?
Yeah.
Go ahead, speak. Everyone's got something to say. Unmute yourself or talk, or I've got one more thing I can share.
I can ask about the modern city of Modi'in, which has been built. Is it sort of conjecture that's on near?
Yes, it's like a lot of places. The answer is that there's a very reasonable assumption which can be shown in a number of places in Israel that the Arab villages maintained the ancient name, the ancient Hebrew name. Okay, the ancient Hebrew name, when the Arabs, when they invaded and they conquered, there's a whole backstory to that. When the Arabs invaded after they conquered the land in the 7th century, they found Jews here. There were Jews in the land of Israel the whole time. There's lots of evidence for that. And there were Jewish villages, actually. And the Arabs started moving in. Arguably, many of those, there's another thing, parenthetically, has to be said, a lot of those Arabs are actually Jews, probably. Okay, more than probably, more than likely. There's some of the Jews that stayed behind but were forcibly converted to Islam and then became like Arabs, but that's by the by. So what's certainly true is that many of the Arab villages maintained ancient Jewish names all over the country. There's tons of examples of that. And certainly this village. Sorry? I didn't catch what someone said. Okay, so Al-Madiyah, that particular village, which is near the modern city of Modi'in, has been identified. This is probably they're probably keeping the name Modi'in. So the modern town of Modi'in is definitely near the ancient town of Modi'in. It's not right on top. It's a kilometer or two away, but it's close enough. It's in the region. So that's just to answer the question.
Thank you.
With pleasure. Just one more thing. So if you have questions, feel free. I'm just going to share one more thing. I do want to just a neat thing to share, which is a quotation. And let me just maybe put it up. It's somewhat slightly political, but that's okay because I'm going to say something a little bit more probing. Let's put it this way: what are we celebrating on Hanukkah? What are we celebrating on Hanukkah? So on the simple level, we're celebrating this miracle. There was a miracle. There was oil, and it lasted 8 days. Wonderful. Problem with that, and there's many. The real problem with that is it's not the only miracle in Jewish history. There are many miracles. We don't celebrate. It's a wonderful thing. A miracle is a great thing to remember. It's a wonderful thing. But why do we celebrate that miracle as opposed to many, many other miracles? There was all sorts of miracles that we've expounded. We don't have we talk on Pesach. We talk about the 10 plagues, but we don't have something specific on the miracles, whatever the case may be. And if you look at the Rambam, who says the first thing we're celebrating is the fact that we had independence for close to 200 years under the Hashmonaim dynasty. And what we're celebrating, it seems to me, is the same reason Hanukkah, it's the same reason we should celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut. We're celebrating independence, Jewish independence, which in addition, you've got the miracle, which symbolized, it was like a great, divine approval, if you like, that there was, we rededicated the temple. But the main thing we're celebrating is that we have our own country. And it's not by chance, that the official symbol of the state of Israel is the menorah. It's not by chance that I was saying that the battles, there were so many battles without which we wouldn't be celebrating Hanukkah, are battles for independence and for holding Jerusalem. It goes together. You can't really have Jewish independence, it seems to me, without having Yerushalayim. That's at least part of it. And but that's the celebration. And it's interesting, just in the context of often we hear we've heard it for a long time, and we're going to see if we've heard it for thousands of years. We've been told we have no rights to the land that we're living in. It's not our land, and that happened with Simon the Maccabee. And I just want to share you something that says in the book of Maccabees, right in front of you. You should see it. Hopefully, custom side. Okay, can you see this? Maccabees 1, chapter 15. So Shimon is challenged by some of the Greeks. Well, you give back the land you've taken. And he said to him, we have neither taken other men's land nor hold that which pertaineth to others, that belongs to other people. But the inheritance of our fathers, which our enemies had wrongfully in possession a certain time. Wherefore we, having an opportunity, hold the inheritance of our fathers. Sort of old style English. You could probably improve the English here, but the point being that Shimon HaMaccabee says, the land we took, and then subsequently, particularly under Alexander Yanai, we extended the borders of the states to the Golan and to the Galil and other areas, right? And Judea and Samaria and so forth. The answer is the same answer. This land was taken by others, and we took it back in a war, and it's our land. And that's part of the message of Hanukkah, it seems to me. I'm just going to throw that out there to think about. You can chew on that. But there's a definitely close connection between the message of Hanukkah, the significance of Hanukkah, and the modern state of Israel. And as it goes back to what I was showing you earlier on, that we don't know where the graves of the Maccabean are, where Simon put up the 7 pyramids. But you can go see 7 pyramids today in the Modi'in area, put up by the state of Israel to commemorate the modern fighters, the same spirit, the same principles of the Maccabean. That may be something to put out there. Okay, questions, observations?
Linda.
Just wonder, I know that, I understand that King Herod married a Hasmonean princess.
Correct.
How long did the Hasmonean dynasty last?
So they lasted from the 160s, right? Say 167. That's the Battle of Emmaus. Through to Herod takes power in the year 37 BCE and dies in the year 4. By the year 4 BCE, unfortunately, there are no Hasmoneans left, because his dear wife Miriam that he married, he murdered. And his 2 sons that he had from her, he murdered. and his brother-in-law Aristobulus, who had been the Kohen Gadol, he also murdered. Basically, Herod murdered the rest of the Hashmonaim. He took over. He was brutal person. He basically married his way in, took over power, and killed them all out because he was threatened by them, because they were seen as the real hero, the real national heroes, and basically murdered them all, and there were none left, essentially. Unfortunately, but that's the Hashmonaim.
But the dynasty had collapsed into disrepute.
Oh, so that's for sure. The reason the Romans got here in the first place was a civil war between the two sons of Yanai and Shlomzion, Aristobulus and Hyrcanus. They're the two names that keep repeating themselves. They had a big fight between each other, and basically. Hyrcanus invited the Romans in the first place. Yochanan Hyrcanus, who'd been Kohen Gadol and the king, he invited the Romans in against his brother. I mean, they probably would come anyway. And then one of these ministers was a man called Antipater, who had been a convert to Judaism from the Edomites. And Antipater's son was Herod. And basically, so Herod grew up in the inner circle of power. Basically, it was a sort of internal coup where he also came back with the Roman army to defeat another Hashmonaim. But what Rabbi Lawrence was saying was there was a lot of internal corruption. Chazal talk about the fact that Alexander Yanai had killed so many of the sages, killed off the Sanhedrin. There was a lot of problems. But Herod was worse, in my opinion. I mean, how bad they were. Herod came in and was so very brutal. What worked in Herod's favor is he had the Romans on his side, right? As I said right at the beginning, way back earlier, we had the Romans as an ally, and then basically the Herod managed to manipulate things. He had the Romans at his side, and he managed to have these monumental buildings, and he has this, So you go see the Western Wall, you're looking at the Herodian Western Wall. And you're going to see Caesarea or Masada. You're going to see what Herod did to Masada, although Hashmonaim did some things before. And basically, their contributions were obliterated by Herod. But it's up to us to look beyond the superficial. I'm saying that one of the hardest things is to scratch beneath the surface to find something that I can tell you from the times of the Hashmonaim. The only thing I can really tell you from this whole Torah that's really from the Hashmonaim physically is the synagogue and the mikveh in Umadin, which is just from their period. Okay, it's not them themselves, it's from that time period. But at the same time, I wanted to say the following, which I think was sort of, I thought it was clear, but I'll make it clearer, which is the real legacy of the Hashmonaim is nothing physical. It's the spirit of the Hashmonaim. It's what they stood for, what they fought for. And what they fought for was Jewish independence in the land of Israel. And that spirit is the spirit of the state of Israel today as well, notwithstanding the fact that they had problems and we have problems. There's room for improvement. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all. You've got a problem if you just think it's about military power and you're losing the sight of the spirituality of things. And maybe that's why Chazal made such a big deal about the miracle of the oil. But at the same time, the bottom line, the baseline is the spirit that leads us to fight. The spirit that, it's not a simple thing. We say, Yerushalayim, we say we put Yerushalayim on our Jerusalem on our highest joy, okay? Imesh kechech Yerushalayim. We sing the songs, but how many of us are willing actually to go out and fight for it? Really, if push came to shove, not that we should have to, but if we had to. And Yehuda Maccabee, then, and David Ben Gurion also now or then, they said no, we have to go and do it. And it's that's, I would say, is that the legacy is the spirit of being willing to fight, because physical things, there's very little left. But there you go. Thank you for listening to me. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
To you. So I wish everyone an enjoyable Hanukkah.
Hanukkah Sameach, and or Hanukkah Sameach from Thursday evening at least, but a good and healthy week up until then and beyond. And thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend. Thank you again, Rabbi Arram.
Thank you very much. Toda rabba lachem. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Shavuot tov.
Shavuot tov.
Thank you.